herb night to get on this herb mic. You know I'm alert, right? You know that it ain't nothing to serve, right? And I'll be killing tracks to the
3 commentaries. Let's go. Smackdown, January 13th, 2023. A big show with 2 huge matches. Some interesting things happened. Not a bad show at all, except for that ending, but we'll get there. So let's go to the big note that's been floating around all day Friday, January 13th. That Triple H had a hands-on, quote-unquote, calm-down meeting with all of the talent, which essentially was dispelling a lot of rumors and a lot of fear-mongering that happens because wrestling journalists are completely irresponsible people with no accountability. As you could tell if you saw Dave Meltzer trending on Twitter for the last couple of hours. But apparently telling them that the shakeup that's been going on in the board has nothing to do with creative, and he's still firmly in place. But he did, in some ways, explain that he does have conversations with Vince McMahon, but he is, of course, the end-all, be-all when it comes to creative. He doesn't have to do what Vince wants him to. You know, Vince has to defer to him. And that Vince apparently has not been coming to TV and hasn't been around the product at all. I mean, the takeover was Tuesday. I'm pretty sure Vince isn't going to hang out around NXT. Apparently, Kevin Dunn also spoke at this show and has known Vince for 40 years, and Vince has said nothing to him about returning to creative or doing anything like that. You know, and Kevin Dunn is a stooge, so you don't have to believe everything he says. But as of right now, and plus I don't see why people are just got Vince PTSD anyway. Like, it's not that big of a deal. The product isn't going to change that much with Vince being there. It's just probably going to be different people getting pushed and other people being de-emphasized, which is probably the right thing when you look at some of the stuff that they've been doing lately. But we'll talk about it when we get there. All right, match 1. Gunther defeated Braun Strowman relatively clean with a powerbomb. The powerbomb came off the second rope because Gunther was being punched in the head, I think it was. You know, Braun Strowman was too big to get picked up, so they had to use he ducked them underneath the second rope joint. Gunther has been Intercontinental Champion for 217 days. I had no idea it's been that long. He's been having a hell of a run. He is, in a way, becoming one of the greatest Intercontinental Champions of all time, especially when it comes to work rate. Hasn't been doing much in terms of character, but the character is there, but the character is like literally 10% of what he does. 90% of what he does is actually wrestling. And he's been getting over, and everything is fantastic. The only problem I had with this, and the crowd was hot for this, by the way. The crowd was just absolutely 100% behind Braun Strowman, which, now that I think about it, I had 2 problems with this. The number one problem I had with this is that it became public that Braun Strowman was wearing these Green Bay Packers boots, the green and yellow boots. And he was wearing these boots because a fan of his got killed in the Waukesha massacre. I think it was 2020 or 2021. And he wanted to wear these boots in a championship match and then auction them off and donate that money to charity. A wonderful thing. Excellent thing. But he wasn't going to win the match. Like, to me, that's just, I don't know how I feel about that. Like, sure, this might have been a thing where telling us that probably wasn't the smartest thing in the world, because now we look at him like a goof. You went through this whole idea, I'm going to dedicate the match to it. The babyface should never dedicate their match to somebody or make a promise to somebody and then fail. You know, like, I'm pretty sure he can still donate the boots. That's fine. But wouldn't it have been nice to like have pictures with the Intercontinental Championship on your shoulder with the boots on and all that kind of stuff? People can sign autographs. It would have been very nice and, you know, heartwarming moment. And then you also don't want the babyface to let people down. You went through all this trouble of having Michael Cole talk about the tragedy on TV. You even put the camera on the boots, and then he lost. Whatever. The second thing, probably why he shouldn't have lost, is that the crowd is 100% behind Braun Strowman. I mean, they were standing up when he did the little pounce over the ring announcer table, and he stood on the table and ripped his shirt off and everything. There were people standing. They were like, "Yeah, hell yeah, man!" This is like the second or third time Braun Strowman has gotten over to this degree just to fucking lose. You know, it's weird. It's weird. You know, I mean, they had him get pinned by Ricochet. Now you getting pinned by Gunther. Look, losing to Gunther is fine. Gunther is no small man. He's a guy with a future. I'm hearing that they're whispering about Gunther wrestling Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania. I think that's just wishful thinking on behalf of the internet. I'm not sure Brock is going to go that route. I don't think Brock wants to get his chest collapsed by Gunther. I don't think he wants that. That looks like something Brock is going to ex-nay. But he's got a future. Braun doing a job for him is fine. But it seems like it's, what was that, 2017? When Braun Strowman was probably one of the most over guys on the roster, yet they did nothing with him and had him just basically, lose to Roman Reigns over and over and over again. It feels like they're doing that again to him. He gets super over. He gets monster reactions. He comes out there. He beats some guys up. He looks good for a couple of weeks. Then he loses. I don't know. I think this match didn't need to be booked, personally. Yes, Gunther needs a quality opponent. He needs quality wins. But Braun Strowman shouldn't be losing. You shouldn't even... This is the thing, you probably just shouldn't have... I know they did it in, the New Generation era. And they would do it sometimes in the Attitude Era. It happened rarely, I think, in the Ruthless Aggression era, except for maybe a couple of times, where you would have, a guy who would be considered a giant wrestling for a mid-card title and he can't win it. I think Batista wrestled for the Intercontinental Championship, maybe once. I think it was a triple threat match. I can think off the top of my head. Now, maybe you guys are a little bit more knowledgeable and you more Google-ish. You may want to look that up. How many times did Batista wrestle for the Intercontinental Championship and not win it? I know he's never won it, but I'm pretty sure he didn't wrestle for it that often either, if ever. So you kind of have to maintain these guys' aura. Braun Strowman is not a mid-card guy, at least not in today's WWE. He should be a top guy. He should be the guy. He and Kevin Owens should be swapping spots. That's how I feel. Strowman should be the guy wrestling Roman, and Kevin Owens should be the guy wrestling for a mid-card belt. I don't know. Doesn't matter, though. Anyway, match was really good. Hate that Braun lost, though. All right, so let's get into the storyline here, because Sami Zayn shows up, knocks on the Bloodline dressing room, finds out Paul Heyman is the only one there. Paul tells him that Roman wants to show him some love, and that the highest form of love Roman can show is to let him handle Kevin Owens alone. So initially, Sami Zayn is shocked. He's kind of disappointed, actually. He wanted to share in the moment with everybody else. He also was expecting to have backup. But he ultimately said that Roman made the right call. He will have to handle the Kevin Owens problem on his own. And ultimately, he's okay with it. He's all right with having to deal with this. So Kevin Owens is going to cut a promo a little bit later. And Sami Zayn confronted him, saying that all he wanted was to be left alone on SmackDown. He finally found a family. Kevin Owens said, look, I was willing to leave you alone on SmackDown, but then the Bloodline came to Raw. And I decided I was going to take the Bloodline apart piece by piece. But if you chose to be part of this. So you chose to be a part of the piece that I'm going to tear off. So Kevin Owens continues saying that Roman Reigns is just using Sami Zayn, to which Sami Zayn says that Kevin Owens just doesn't get it. Doesn't see how many times Roman has hugged him, acknowledged him, respects him. But tonight, they're going to just have to solve the Kevin Owens problem. So at approximately 9:30, Sami Zayn's theme song hits. And I was like, oh, we're doing that. This match is going to be 20 minutes. And I think It was in the neighborhood of 20 minutes. These guys, they don't have bad matches. They just don't. My issue here was, of course, the disqualification finish. The match being so long and ending in disqualification, that is it's like, not to get too vulgar, it's like having sex and not coming. You know, why would you have, why do they insist on having these matches be 20 minutes with no climax? You know, you got people taking them on this ride and it's excellent and whatever, and then we just gonna randomly throw the Usos in the ring and beat up Kevin Owens after we told them that they're not going to be there. I know it's a swerve. I know it's supposed to be a surprise. And I know it's a storyline, but you still got people to invest 20 of their minutes into this match, and then you threw it away. You fucking set the match on fire by having a disqualification. I would not mind a disqualification if this match was not that long. All right? Because disqualifications are actually pretty rare in the Triple H era. It's not like, you know, during the Vince days where, like, you know, 7 out of the 6 matches were a disqualification. They was having somehow disqualifications on the dark match and all that kind of shit. This is a rare, well-timed disqualification. Because I understand what they were trying to do. Earlier, Paul Heyman was talking about Sami Zayn needed to handle Kevin Owens by himself. Got Sami Zayn all hyped up about it. And then the Usos showed up. And Sami Zayn knows that the Usos showing up is because Roman told him to go there. So now he's getting mixed messages, you know? Oh, you wanted me to handle it myself, but then you send the Usos anyway. So you saying I can't handle it? You saying I can't do it? Then also, nice little subtext here, as the Usos are just the Usos and Solo Sikoa, which he technically is the Uso. They're beating the ass of Kevin Owens. I mean, they're just tearing him up, you know. And Sami Zayn is doing a lackluster, you know, he's doing the lackluster secret handshake with Jimmy. He's looking at, you know, Kevin Owens all beat up and fucked over, and he's like, oh man, I don't know about this one. Like, this is rough. The physical story that he's telling, looking at his body language, his facial expressions, the hesitation when it comes to everybody else putting the ones up, and Sami Zayn, he hesitated. You know, that one little moment was worth a lot of words. That one little moment. That's something that when they put together the package, they can show that Sami Zayn, you know, he was on the team, but he wasn't 100% down with everything. And they've been telling this really cool story of Sami Zayn basically joining a gang, but being a good kid in a bad situation, you know. Like, they're my friends. Like, but they're not your friends. You're going to end up in jail or dead. You don't know shit, Mom. It's like a Bronx Tale. I don't know if you guys have ever seen the Bronx Tale. Calogero, you know, was arguing with his dad, you know. The working man's an idiot. The working man's a moron. And Dad's like, what the hell? You know, because he's been propagandized into thinking that, you know, gangsters are the higher level of man over the working man, because they take whatever they want. And the working man, you know, dedicates hours and hours and hours of his time to earning what he wants. So it's kind of got that feel to it, where, you know, Sami Zayn is blind and oblivious to the gaslighting and violence of the Usos and Solo Sikoa and Roman Reigns, because he's on the right side of it, so he doesn't really get it. And I really like that. And this seems to sort of crack that naivete, where it's like, oh, this can get really bad. Also, oh, I could have handled this if I wanted to. You know, I didn't need you guys. So there's a couple of layers here that's pretty good, but I don't like the idea of 20-minute disqualifications. I am not a fan of that. Other than that, though, that match was excellent, you know, and I really enjoyed it. Okay, Rey Mysterio talked about the specialness of the holidays, But Dom ruined Christmas, and now Dominic is running around dressed like a criminal and pretending to be a thug. And he said, as a father, it breaks his heart. But as a man, he's had enough of Dominic. He said he came to SmackDown for a fresh start and wants to leave, does not want Dominic to become a distraction. So he's going to turn his focus to winning the Royal Rumble. At that point, Karrion Kross interrupts, says that it's good for a guy Ray's age to still have goals. And he says, he says, otherwise, why do you slide your old ass out of bed? Said that everybody remembers Ray winning the Royal Rumble 17 years ago. And the crowd chanted, he cheered, and he was like, yeah, but it was 17 years ago. Then he asked Ray what Dominic's reaction was to Ray winning the Royal Rumble. And Ray was just looking at him like, what? And he was like, oh yeah, you wouldn't know because you weren't there. So then he kind of jumped on the Dominic thing saying, hey, who do you hate more? Yourself, for failing to raise Dominic, or Dominic for not growing up the way that you wanted him to? And Ray fired off on him. So Ray and Kross gets to scrapping a little bit. Ray tends to do what a pet peeve. I love Ray, I really do. But he does a pet peeve that I don't necessarily care for, but which is necessary for a man his size, is that he does wrestling holds in his fight scenes. And I cannot stand it. I do not like when guys are fighting. I'm talking like legitimately fighting. There should always be a difference between your fighting and your wrestling. If there's a bell ringing, you should be grabbing holds, When things break down and you're throwing punches and kicks, okay. But you should be trying to wrestle. That's where you do all your acrobatic shit. When you're in a regular fight scene, you're in your street clothes and you and this guy just got into it. Under no circumstance should you be breaking out a head scissor. Like, who does that in a fight? Nobody just breaks out a hurricanrana in a fight. I've never seen that before in my life. It's an unnatural position that requires the other person to help. It's not a fight position. But when you have somebody like Rey Mysterio, who's like literally 5'6" or something like that, you have to equalize this thing somehow. So in order for Ray to sort of get some type of advantage over Kross, he has to do lucha moves. So he kind of gets this little lucha thing on Karrion Kross. Scarlett distracts Ray, and Kross chokes Ray out. I like this. This is really effective. Kross needed this. He needed to nail this, and I think he did. He did a really good job here. I don't know what took so long for us to get here. Because now Ray versus Kross is next week. Fine. My thing is, and this is another, we're going to talk about this again in a minute. This took so long to get here that I don't blame people for not remembering that this was even going on. Okay, so, it's been like, I think they mentioned it last week because Kross wrestled the mixed tag matches last week, I believe. So, but there was a lot of space in between Kross's initial threat to Rey Mysterio and this match. There's been a lot of time in between, and they have not dedicated a lot of time in between. In fact, people have completely forgotten about Kross's threat towards Roman Reigns. That shit was, I don't know, it ain't been a year. It's been however long he's been back, so whatever. There's slow burn, and then there is the AEW method of, oh, don't you remember this from 2 months ago? It's like, no, I don't actually. I do other things with my life instead of sitting around, memorizing your storylines. Okay, so something that actually elevated pretty quickly. Maxine Dupree, Emma, and Raquel Rodriguez are backstage talking to Liv Morgan. Liv Morgan is volunteering to be number one in the Women's Royal Rumble. Emma's like, you know what? It's probably not a good idea. Maxine Dupree says, well, it doesn't matter what number you come in, you ain't winning. And then Raquel says that, somebody that the size of Liv Morgan should probably come in number 30. To which Liv tells her, I got my palms read. And Raquel was like, oh, that's interesting. And she reached up and slapped Raquel Rodriguez. And I just sat back on the couch And I said to myself, like, man, these guys are getting real comfortable booking these bulletproof midgets to just smack and kick around people twice their fucking size. I don't remember this ever happening this often until we got into this era of wrestling, where it's like you're a 4-foot midget, but somehow you got magic powers where you can body slam people twice your size. I'm just gonna hold off and smack this giant because I don't got no respect for her. So then they didn't even have Raquel Rodriguez respond in a violent way, which is what she would do because she's so much bigger than Liv Morgan. And Liv Morgan antagonized her. You know, she wasn't trying to be offensive to Liv, but Liv smacked her. She should have hauled off and put her forearm under Liv's throat and lifted her up and said, "You want to fight? All right, you'll be there. I'll be there." Instead, she very weakly said, you know, something in Spanish, and she's tired of people acting like she's not the biggest and strongest. And I was like, oh no. Oh no, no, no. She needed to pitch Liv Morgan across the room. And I'm just talking like grab her by the collarbone and underneath her armpit and just tossed her. I was just like, yeah. And that's it. Liv bounces off the wall and slides down like, shit. You know? And say, like, that's practice for the Rumble. That's how easily I can get you out of here. I was doing you a favor by saying you should come in at number 30. You know? Instead, we got Raquel looking like an idiot because she got smacked. And Liv Morgan looking like she got the biggest, most brass balls on the roster. So they have the match, and Raquel wins the match, which is telling the story that they were telling in this promo segment, is that Liv is biting more than she can chew. I get it. I completely get it. Raquel won the match. Fine. The storyline is that Liv Morgan is, you know, trying to punch above her weight. You know, the likelihood of her winning the Royal Rumble is minimal, but she's willing to go out there and, I guess in her new Daredevil gimmick, she's willing to do whatever it takes. You know, and part of that was, you know, trying to push the boulder uphill of defeating Raquel Rodriguez, which I don't think she's beaten Raquel yet. And they've wrestled a couple of times now. Now, this is fine from a character perspective for Liv. My issue with it comes with the idea that perhaps they're building to Liv Morgan winning the Royal Rumble, which, let me tell you, if Liv Morgan gets into this Royal Rumble and goes coast to coast, I will be incredibly disappointed. Not because I hate Liv Morgan, but because it doesn't make any sense. Okay? Let's go with what makes sense. If you want to do things in a way that will be interesting, Liv comes in at number 1 and she's there at the end. But she still loses. She has to lose. Rhea Ripley has to win that match. There's no real reason for Liv Morgan to win the Royal Rumble. I don't think anybody wants to see Liv Morgan in a highlighted match at WrestleMania for one of the women's championships. Against who? Against who? Bianca? No, nobody wants to see that. Against Charlotte? If Charlotte even gets there to the championship, you know, because she's a champion now, that didn't mean she's going to be the champion at WrestleMania. Why? You know, I guess Charlotte and Liv have history. You know, I guess they could play on that if they wanted to, but I'm not a fan. And it seems like this is the only storyline they got going in the women's division when it comes to the Royal Rumble so far. And we only got 2 weeks, and I'll talk about that later, but in fact, let's talk about it now. The Royal Rumble is way too deep into the month. For there to not have been a December pay-per-view, the Royal Rumble being the 28th, that's a long goddamn time, man. That's too much time. And it was clearly too much time because they're not building up shit. You know? All we're going to do is this a long build for the Royal Rumble. It's still people just walking up declaring for the Royal Rumble and that's it. You know? They're not building up any real storylines for the Royal Rumble. You know, like, I'm talking about the Royal Rumble match now. You know? The men's side doesn't have really that much of a storyline going into it at all. You know? they're starting to really now talk more about Cody, and that's kind of the story going in. But that's it. And the only story for the girls is Liv Morgan. Like, oh, you had 8 weeks. You had 8 weeks to tease other people being in the Royal Rumble, to tease other people trying to scratch and claw and get into the Royal Rumble. They're starting to, just announce random names in the Royal Rumble. I'm just like, okay, whatever you say. But I would prefer if you did it a little bit differently. But the idea that Liv Morgan could win the Royal Rumble has got me gobsmacked. But I'm not going to be upset until it actually happens. Then I'm depending on how they do it, let me actually get mad. All right, match 2. Xia Li is defeated by Tegan Nox. Oh yeah, remember that thing that happened a month ago, where Xia Li got carried out by security for helping Damage Control, and now she's not a member of Damage Control. She's going back to being a Chinese martial artist. And Tegan Nox, well, she's on the roster. She exists. The people didn't care about this shit at all, period. You couldn't pay a motherfucker to care about this. And unfortunately for Xia Li, who's just been there for a long, long time, it's an issue with her where they just start and stop. They got something for her. It seems like it's going to be interesting, lead to a character change or something like that, and then just she's back doing the exact same thing she was doing before. Somebody said like she's the Asian Lacey Evans, and that's absolutely true, because they keep pulling Lacey Evans, saying we're going to repackage you, and it ends up being the same shit again and again. Like it's the same thing. She's doing the same thing. Like Xia Li's literally doing the same thing. Like, why couldn't she join Damage Control? It's not like Damage Control is prestigious or something like that, and only the best can join. Fucking Dakota Kai's in that group. She helped them win. There had to be a reason for it, and it seems like we just dropped it. We just forgot. It's over. Let it go. I was like, wait a minute. I'm pretty sure Vince would have did that. People would have acted a fool. If Vince would have required you to wait 3 weeks or whatever to have Xia Li versus Tegan Nox with no fucking build-up in between, just Xia Li was unmasked as the attacker, and then nothing for 3 fucking weeks. And then all of a sudden, match with the girl with the shiniest wizard, boring, flavorless rice cake Tegan Nox. Good Lord. Triple H. Good Lord, man. The Viking Raiders. So the Viking Raiders, they had they showed some footage of them attacking McIntyre and Sheamus last week after the big tag team championship match. They had a vignette where Valhalla, Sarah Logan, says that she saw 2 people sentenced to battle and that suffering awaits. Drew McIntyre and Sheamus had differing agendas when they cut their promo. So I believe it was Sheamus who wanted to fight the Usos because he felt screwed out of a tag team championship match. He wants a rematch. While it was Drew McIntyre who's fired up and he wants to fight the Viking Raiders. So that's chopping each other in the chest. Sheamus is taking some pop shots at Drew McIntyre, saying you need to listen to your elders and your betters. And they chopping each other in the chest. So Adam Pearson's in between these 2 idiots. And they like Bebop and Rocksteady all of a sudden. He's stuck in between these 2 idiots. And he comes up with this idea for a SmackDown Tag Team Championship tournament. And, these guys are like, that doesn't help the cause at all. That doesn't get us a title match. And also doesn't get us the Viking Raiders. Why do we care about this? So then Adam Pearce said, well, your first round opponents will be the Viking Raiders. 2 birds with 1 stone. If they can win the tournament, they'll get the Usos again. And they get the Viking Raiders first. I was like, okay. I don't hate a tournament. I don't hate that concept. My question is, this should have been built up as something near the final, because it's an actual storyline. So my thing is, what are you going to do on the other side of the bracket to make that interesting? Because they haven't released a bracket. They just had this. At least I haven't seen a bracket. I didn't look either. So maybe it's out there. Maybe it ain't. I don't know. I don't know. Anyway, they just made this match. And I'm like, okay, why not build up the Viking Raiders, let them get a couple of wins, and then McIntyre and Sheamus beat them. Or the other way around, however you want to do it. But to have them be the first match, well, it's like, well, shit, that's like Michigan and Ohio State playing in game 1 of the season. It's like, oh, everybody's going to be super excited for this. Let's just do it the first game. It's like, okay, so how am I going to care about the rest of the fucking games? You know? That's college football for any of my non-American friends. I mean, American college football. You know, I don't know anything about soccer, so I can't give you a good soccer analogy. But it's like, you know, the two best teams, and I'm not saying that because they're literally the two best teams. I'm saying like they're the two most visible teams. It's like you put Los Lotharios in this thing and Hit Row or something like that. Nobody's going to care about them. You know, fucking Maximum Male Models in this thing. Nobody's going to care. So the other half of that bracket has to be interesting. I'm hoping maybe Pretty Deadly gets in that other half of that bracket. That could be interesting. But tournament now Adam Pearce makes it sound like the Usos are defending only the SmackDown Tag Team Championships on SmackDown. Just like he kind of made it a little bit sound like the Usos are only defending the Raw Championships on Raw. Like, they don't have to defend both titles equally, and the belts are not fused. So, this is kind of how the original brand split was supposed to work, where the champion will work on both brands, and they would kind of alternate which brand they was going to wrestle on. So, you know, if you were the undisputed champion, you would have a Raw opponent for a month, 2 months, or whatever. But you also have a SmackDown opponent after that would have been built up to wrestle you for whatever the case may be. That is what they're doing now. You know, Roman Reigns had a SmackDown opponent, Drew McIntyre. Once he got done with that, he was cruising for a while. Now he's got a Raw opponent and Kevin Owens. You know, they're doing the same thing now with the Usos. I get it. That's good. My issue here is it sounds like if the Usos were to lose, they will only lose one set of belts. But we know that that's not how Roman is defending the belt. He's not defending the belts separately. He's defending the belts both at one time. So we have an inconsistency here that I don't think anybody outside of the internet is going to care too much about. And that's, you know, Roman not defending both each title individually. But again, outside of the internet, I don't think anybody cares about that. All right, so Bray Wyatt had a promo where essentially he remembered who he is now and remembers all the things that he's done and said he's the color red in a black and white world. He is him. He is everything. He's the eater of worlds. Knows who he is, but who are you? Said that the pitch black match will be a baptism in the dark, a rebirth for Bray Wyatt. And LA Knight should run. This was solid. I think the crowd little ate it up. You know, they're really still enjoying Bray Wyatt, despite the fact that, you know, people on the internet really don't like him. I'm kind of in the middle. I think that things are moving too slowly, you know. But ultimately, you know, that's kind of the problem with the Triple H era. If I think, you know, I had to, you know, one of the things outside of, you know, midgets, you know, bullying big dudes, you know, fucking Ricochet pinning Top Dollar in 2 minutes or something like that. It's that the stories are moving very slow. You know, yes, take your time, slow cook it, but you have to cook it. You have to turn the fucking fire on, you know? So, and then you also have to not skip weeks. You know, you can't remind people, like, that's like if you know, was reading The Wizard of Oz and, you know, Dorothy crashes in the magical land of Oz, and then 17 chapters later, it's like, oh yeah, I forgot. Don't you remember when that girl slammed into that witch? It's like, wait a minute, what the fuck was we doing this whole time then? You know, why are we just now going back to that? I don't know, but it's weird. I like Bray Wyatt though, so I'm gonna give him kind of some slack. All right, Sonya Deville. Sonya Deville was very upset. She wants a rematch with Charlotte Flair. Adam Pearce said no. Sonya Deville then accused him of being biased for Charlotte. Said that Charlotte got an opportunity to just show up and get title matches whenever she wanted to. Adam Pearce said, look, I gave you the exact same shot I gave her. You showed up, called your shot. The difference is she won, you lost. So Sonya Deville was like, what do you want? For me to challenge for the Royal Rumble? Is that what you want? And Adam Pearce was like, yeah, kind of. And Sonya Deville was like, no, I'm not going to do that. So she went and started a fight with Charlotte in the backstage area and got beat up and continued to get beat up the entire fight scene. And it was fun. At least, look, we was doing something with Sonya Deville, which is what I asked. I can't be mad at you for doing what I asked. Even though you're not doing it well, but you're doing it okay. You know, Sonya Deville is actually an opponent. I think she needs an equalizer at this point. Considering she lost the first match and lost so convincingly, you probably need to have a equalizer in this. Like, you need to have like a big woman or at least another woman that hangs out with Sonya Deville to aid Sonya Deville in this fight so far right now. Otherwise, nobody's going to believe and buy into this storyline because Sonya's already lost. And you had Charlotte can throw her around during the backstage area. So it's not like she attacked Charlotte with like a weapon and bashed her shoulder in or something like that, which would have been cool, would have been fine. Instead, they decided to go with this, which is okie dokie, fine. All right, so that's SmackDown. 2 very long matches. I liked both of them. I questioned the finish of both of them, but, you know, the finish worked for the storyline. Gunther is likely going to be the guy that breaks the Honky Tonk Man's record. I can see that coming. I believe it. No Roman this week. Okay, fine. I'm pretty sure he didn't want to be in Wisconsin. I mean, who wants to be in Wisconsin? It seems like Wisconsin is what's left of Canada after it burped or whatever. In any event, the show was very solid. Enjoyed the Rey Mysterio Karrion Kross segment. The women's segments need work. Definitely need work. They definitely need to diversify their roster a little bit. They need to bring in some other people to give us a storyline for that women's Royal Rumble. You know, I don't know if Charlotte and Sonya Deville is the match for the women's championship at the Royal Rumble. I kind of hope it isn't. You know, I kind of hope it isn't. But if it is, they got to make it interesting in 2 weeks. Because right now, Sonya Deville doesn't look like much of a challenger. Do ask the question, where's Ronda Rousey and Shayna Baszler and Shotzi? You know, where did all these people go? I don't know. I guess Chelsea Green is still sending her emails. She hopped up on, you know, coffee or, you know, high sugary energy drinks or whatever it is she loves, firing off emails for characters that she wants to do on Raw. Triple H just hitting delete immediately. Like, you just do what I tell you to do. Stop it. Otherwise, the show was solid. It was a very solid show. Really good watch. Would watch again. Probably will be watching Strowman and Gunther again. May watch the main event again, but knowing it's a disqualification, maybe not. But what do you guys think? Like, share, subscribe. Thank you guys for your time. I will talk to you guys later, man. Peace out.